In this video I'm looking at changes to UVLayout for version 2.09.04. So here we've got a mesh with UVs that we've already laid out, and so this is just an imported OBJ file, but what's interesting about this is the let's say this is the UVs for the bottom of one of the feet. What we've got here is overlapping UV, so there's the bottom of the left foot and the bottom of the right foot been overlaid so that they share texture space. So this is just a standard technique for sort of making UVs more compact, just by sharing texture. So there's nothing new about that in the under Edit Tools here. This S key thing, you can use that when you're creating the UVs to set up those sorts of overlapping UVs, but that's under Self there. But what's new is I may not have created these UVs in UVLayout, they might have been done somewhere else, and I'm bringing them into UVLayout to work on or pack or whatever. And so let's say I wanted to pack all of these using UVLayout's packing tool. What I'll do is just show you the problem. I'll select both of these shells here, right? So, and then I'll go pack. So you can see what's happened. As soon as I pack, those two shells that were overlapping are now being separated, because the packing tool is, that's the whole idea of the packing tool, is to take all the shells, pack them so there's no overlaps into the minimal amounts for minimum wastage. So it's doing what it's supposed to, but that's not what you want, because you want to keep those two shells together. And so there's not just those, there's a couple of others there. All the hands and the feet and the arms and the legs here are overlapping shells. So you could go in, I'll show you what previously you would have done in UVLayout. So I've got these shells overlapping. I'd have to pick the shells, go to pack, create a box, and then lock the shells in there. Because if I don't lock the shells, if I just put them in a box and I go pack, you can see what it's done is within that box it's packed those two shells, but it's pulled them apart again. So to stop them doing that is you would lock a shell. So you can see now that hasn't worked. I need to lock both of them. So you can see it's quite fiddly. I have to lock both shells. Actually, instead of sort of moving them apart like that, I could have just stretched a box around both shells. Anyway, so now both shells are locked. They're in the box. I can finally pack all, and they're kept together. So it was possible, but it was quite fiddly to setting that up. So what you can do now, let's just undo everything. So we're back to where we were. We've got about half a dozen overlapping shells here, the arms and legs and all the feet. So I click on box and lock overlapping here. This is what's new. So that goes through and examines all the shells and automatically boxes and locks them if they're overlapping. So now I can pack that, and I can turn rotate on, whatever, and it will keep all of those shells together, the ones that were overlapping. So if you've got half a dozen, or if you've got a couple of hundred, it'll just find them all and set them up so that you can pack without them being separated. So let's stop that now. So it doesn't just work on, let's undo that. They don't have to be perfectly overlapping. There might be situations, for example, where, let's say, you've got shells like that, and for some reason they're sharing this bit of texture here, but these other bits of texture aren't shared. But even still, you want to keep those together because of that shared UVs there you want to maintain. So that box and lock will find any overlapping shells. They don't have to be perfectly overlapping, they just need to be overlapping a bit, and it'll lock them together so that then they can be packed. Right, so that's the first major change for version 2.904, so let's load this file just to go through a couple of the other ones. So here's our same model with nice UVs, and I turn the grids on there. You can see all the checker squares are all about the same size over the surface, so that's what UVLayout does with its optimize. It just tries to maintain the same pixel density or texture density across the entire surface. So that's what it's always trying to do. But there might be situations where you want to adjust the texture density. So in previous videos I've shown the local scaling. So that's under here, local scaling here. So what that allows you to do is, for example, I may want to increase the texture resolution just on the head. So the local scaling allows you to scale. So instead of just making this bigger, which is what you'd normally do, you'd make that bigger. You can see the checkers are smaller to indicate there's more resolution there, but you can see at the junction here, there's a sudden change in texture resolution, which might be visible when you apply the texture to this. So the local scaling gives you tools for doing a nice smooth blend across there. I won't go into that now because it's already covered in other videos, but what's new here is this these buttons here for multiply distance face. So what that is there might be situations where you want to apply this local scaling based on this is to do with the camera, so the distance from the camera or facing the camera. I'll go for facing the camera first because that one's sort of a bit simpler. So the idea there is maybe this character is 99% of the time viewed from the front and not the back, so it might make more sense then to maximize the texture resolution just for these things facing this direction, and you can shrink the texture usage for polygons at the back. So the way you set that up is, face him towards the camera, click on the face button. So you can see here now, stuff facing forwards turned red, stuff around the back is turned blue. So it hasn't actually done anything yet, it's just applied this local scaling. So you can see here, here's all my shells. If I click this button here, it changes the shading, so it shows the weights. So basically things in red have been scaled so they will shrink, and things in blue have been scaled so they will enlarge. So it doesn't actually happen until I re-optimize, so I'll just go optimize run for. So this will go through all those shells and reapply those weightings, the local scaling, and so it'll be finished soon, or I might just stop it because it's probably done enough to show the principle. Alright, so you can get some weird shapes here, but what's happened is if I view our texture now, so from the front we've got small checkers, and at the back we've got large checkers. So what that's saying is, and you can see from the side here, it gradually changes from small checkers, which means higher texture resolution, gradually changes to lower texture resolution at the back. So by using that technique, you can, with the same 1K by 1K or whatever resolution texture map, you can get increased apparent resolution on the face that you see more often, and around the back it'll be lower texture resolution, which you don't see as often. So obviously it depends on how this character is being used and whether it's viewed from the back as much as the front. It depends on your situation, but in those situations where you only ever view it from the front, but maybe from the back from a distance, then this might be a handy tool for that. Alright, so another one. Let's just undo all of that. So here we are back to our nice even textures. So that's based on multiplying based on how it's facing the camera, but this other one is multiplying based on the distance from the camera. So in that situation, let's say we do this. So let's say this model is only ever viewed from this angle, from underneath or along its length. So you can see here we have, for these polygons here close to the camera, the texture checkers are large, which means the texture is quite stretched, and right back there on the head the checkers are small, so it's compressed, so you get a lot of texture resolution there, which is a bit wasted. You sort of want more texture resolution here up close and less back there. So this is where you'd use this scaling based on distance. So facing's no good because both the under the chin and the under the foot are facing towards the camera, so you wouldn't use facing multiplier because it'd be the same value, so you want to use distance. So further away from the camera, the scaling reduces it. So we'll just click on distance here. Alright, so again, with before, it's just applied the weights. So if I turn that on, you can see blue here, red there. But now we have to optimize to apply that. Now, one thing I didn't mention before is you don't actually have to optimize. You could just use the rescale here. So what that does is changes the size of each shell, not its shape. So it just changes the size. So that might be enough, or that might be what you want. You might want to keep your shells exactly the same shape and just change their scale. So here we can see already the checkers on the bottom of the foot and under the chin there are about the same, and that's simply by changing the size of the shells relative to each other. We have a problem here with something like this torso section though, is the checkers here are large, and as it moves away from the camera they get small, so because we're only globally changing the size of that shell, it's not giving a nice transition. So that's where you do the optimize. So here it just goes through each shell and it adjusts its shape so that this change in scale is gradual along its length. So let's just let that finish. So now you can see here I'm viewing this from underneath, that across the whole surface the checkers are about the same size from that view. And so that means again, for the same amount of texture, 1K or 512 by 512 whatever, you can maximize the crispness of things closer to the camera and reduce things away where you don't see them. And so again, if I view this from the front, you can see what's going on here is everything back there towards the camera it's got high resolution, and as it moves away from the camera it gets lower resolution. So again, that's a situation where your object is always viewed from just one particular direction. Then this sort of thing can be really handy for that. So that's the major changes in major additions to version 2.9.04.